Good afternoon and welcome to the Joint Standing Committee on Transportation. We're here for a handful of public hearings this afternoon, but before we begin, we will get started with introductions. Representative White.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim White, District 30, which is the majority of Piscataquis County and 2 towns in Somerset.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dan Ankleys. I represent House District 100, a central portion of the town of Brunswick.
Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for your patience. My name is Brad Farron. I live in Norwich Walk and I represent Senate District 3.
Good afternoon. Oh, go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Bishop. I represent District 17, Bucksport, Orland, Verona, and Penobscot.
Good afternoon. I'm Karen Montel and I represent House District 54, Farmingdale and Gardner.
Good afternoon, Roger Albert. I represent District 2, St. John Valley, Aroostook County.
Hello there, my name is Michael Ray and I represent House District 40, which includes the island of Islesboro and the towns of Appleton, Lincolnville, Liberty, Morrill, Montville, and Searsmont.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wayne Perry. I represent House District 140, which covers Arundel, Dayton, and about half a line.
And I'm Representative Lydia Crafts of House District 46, which includes the towns of Damascotta, Newcastle, Bristol, Noblesboro, and Monhegan Island. And I'm the House Chair.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm Senator Tim Nangle. I represent Senate District 26, which is Casco, Wyndham, Raymond, Fry Island, and parts of Westbrook. We're going to start out with LD 2181, resolve to rename a bridge in Roxbury, the Roxbury Fry Veterans Memorial Bridge, presented by Senator Martin of Oxford.
Okay. Got the wrong sheet up.
Hold on.
There we go.
1 second, Senator Martin. We'll be presiding over this public hearing today, Joint Sitting Committee on Transportation. The purpose of the hearing is to invite testimony from members of the public regarding proposed legislation that is pending before the committee. The committee will hear testimony from persons present who wish to speak for, against, and neither for nor against the bills to be heard today. With leave of the chair, committee members may ask questions of any person testifying today. Other questions are not permitted. Whether or not you testify, you may submit written testimony to the committee. Please be mindful that testimony is public and is available to all once it is presented. Persons testifying at the public hearing today are advised that the hearing is live streamed and may be seen and heard by persons watching online, and that a recording will be archived. So if you called in sick, that could be a problem. Today's hearing, we will be taking testimony from people in the room and those who have registered to testify electronically pursuant to the committee rules. This committee will give members of the public priority when we take testimony. Only the sponsor and co-sponsors of the bill will be recognized before members of the public. We will take testimony in the following order: those speaking in favor, those speaking in opposition, and those speaking neither for nor against, but who wish to offer additional information. We reserve the right to have a 3-minute timer. Time limit to public testimony. The time remaining will be displayed on the monitor in front of the chairs. If you're in the room and you have prepared testimony, please provide 20 copies to our clerk, Andrew. Testimony materials submitted electronically through the legislature's testimony portal is available by clicking on the committee materials link on the committee's webpage. Concept draft amendments, if submitted, are also available via this link. When you're called on, I'll ask you to state your name and your place of residence and the organization you represent, if any. When you introduce yourself, please be sure to indicate how you would like members to refer to you and address to you, including, if you wish, your title and pronouns. Let's see. I recognize Senator Martin for presentation of the bill.
Thank you very much, Senator Nangle, Representative Crafts, and honorable members of the Joint Committee on Transportation. I am Joe Martin, and I proudly represent the citizens of Senate District 19, which includes much of northern Oxford County and communities in Franklin County. I am here today to present LD 2181, a resolve to rename the bridge in Roxbury and the Roxbury Fry Veterans Memorial Bridge. I urge the committee to support renaming the Fry Bridge, which is located at the Fry Crossover Road in Roxbury and goes over the Swift River in honor of our veterans. I was compelled to submit this bill after being contacted by several local veterans who requested the change. I believe such a designation would serve as a lasting tribute to the men and women who have served our country with courage and sacrifice. This proposal has gained the support of the Roxbury Select Board and people in the community. A bridge named for veterans would stand as a daily reminder of their dedication, resilience, and freedoms they helped secure for our community. It would also offer a meaningful way to express our collective gratitude, not just in words, but in a permanent and visible way. Americans owe an incredible debt to the men and women in uniform. This is the least we can do, and I urge the committee to vote ought to pass on LD 2181. Thank you for your time and your thoughtful consideration on this proposal. Any questions?
Thank you, Senator. Senator Farren, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Martin, for bringing this forward. And I know we got the letter from the town of Roxbury, and just for the record, right, the process that we go through, I understand that where it was named the Fry Bridge is because Fry is like a subsection within the town of Roxbury. Have I got that right?
Yeah, a suburb, if there's any such thing in a small community. Yeah,
Okay.
a subsection.
Just wanted to understand that.
It's the
Thank
only
you.
bridge in town as well.
And it,
That actually has tar on it.
right. Appreciate that.
Okay, I have the chairman of the Veterans Committee up here with me. He doesn't have the 20 copies to pass out, but he'd just like to say a few words about what we're doing on the bridge, if that's okay with the committee.
Yep. Did you have a
There you
question?
go.
Thank you for holding this and letting me speak. My name is Robert White, United States Marine Corps, Sergeant First Class, United States Army, retired. In the back with me today, we have Howard Witten, United States Air Force, Select Board Member Matthew Patno, and Select Board Chairman Tim DeRouche. We make up the Veterans Committee for the town of Roxbury. We had one that had to quit, Air Force veteran, 20 years, due to health issues. Roxbury is a unique town. We're small, 300 people, and we're building a Veterans Memorial. That's gonna cost us about $160,000 when we're done, with no taxpayer funds. This bridge will just carry us on because it's within sight of our memorial, where we can say to the American warrior, we love what you do, we love you, and we want to honor you and cherish you for what you've been doing. People don't realize all of us signed the dotted line to give our lives for this country. Whether we knew you or didn't know you, it didn't matter. We signed the dotted line. I served in Cambodia, and I served in the fall of Saigon. I'm a Vietnam era veteran because I didn't make it to country until Saigon fell. But it doesn't matter because Roxbury is going to honor all our veterans, alive, dead, moved out of town, living in town, buried in town. We're going to honor all 300 to 400 of them. And we're going to have their names put on the memorial. And this bridge will be just the drop in the bucket. Will help us as people go across Swift River, they'll be able to say, that's in honor of my dad, in honor of my grandfather, in honor of my uncle, my mother. We have several female veterans in Roxbury. So we need to get those guys honored and let Roxbury finish that off with this bridge. We want to make it so that everybody feels welcome when they come to Roxbury. They can see it and they do it. I'm sorry about my head and neck up here. I'm a disabled veteran and they took care of me when I was in. Now they're taking care of me when I'm out. But that's what I wanted to get to you guys is we need this for us, for the American warrior, to say thank you for a job well done. We've got veterans that died, they won't see it. They died in combat in World War II and World War I. But their grandchildren and great-grandchildren will see it. And they'll know it's for them. Thank you. Has anybody got any questions?
Thank you. Does anybody, first of all, no need to apologize and thank you for your service. Does anybody have any questions? Senator Farren.
No questions, Mr. Chair. Just thank you so much for coming down here today and being patient and the folks that you brought down and yeah, thank you for your service.
I hope you'll vote to pass this bill so we can get it done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to testify in favor? See? Oh,
Yeah, come right up.
I got 3 minutes. I won't need that long. I'm Howard Witten, president of the Roxbury Community Historical Society. We have incredible support in town. We just started this historical society 3 years ago. Roughly 300 residents of Roxbury. We have a third of them as members. We've had incredible support over these ideas, and Roxbury is separated by this nasty old Swift River. And I've got pictures of the bridge back in the 30s, and then they rebuilt it in the 50s. So it's connected both sides of Roxbury for well over 100 years. And I know people will appreciate it when they see that. If we had businesses in town, they'd support it too. But we're so little, we don't have that. So I appreciate your efforts and anything you can do, and feel free to contact Roxbury for any information you need. Our selectmen are right behind us. The whole town's behind this idea, so we hope you are too. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Whitten. Anybody else have any testimony in favor? Any testimony in opposition? Seeing none, any testimony neither for nor against? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on LD 2181. Senator Farren.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we go into work session on LD 2181.
We have a motion and a second to enter work session. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous of those present. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking in our folders on LD 2181, we have the letter from the town of Roxbury. We have the letter from the DOT with this particular bridge, and we heard the explanation of it resides on both ends in the town of Roxbury, and we heard the testimony. I would make a motion of ought to pass on LD 2181.
We have a motion ought to pass and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous of those present.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. LD, we're going to open the public hearing on LD 2183. And Senator Libby resolved to rename the Little River Bridge in the town of Cornish, the Cornish Veterans Memorial Bridge. Senator Libby, are you just going to present all?
If you'd like me to, yes.
Sure, why not?
Senator Nangle, Representative Crafts, esteemed members of the Joint Standing Committee on Transportation. It gives me great pleasure to be here before you. I'm Senator James Libby. I represent Senate District 22, which is parts of Cumberland, Oxford, and York counties. I'm here to present 4 bills to you today. LD 2183 is an act to rename the Little River Bridge in the town of Cornish and Cornish Veterans Memorial Bridge. The town of Cornish voted to rename this bridge at a special town meeting in September. This is part of a larger effort in which my constituent, Callista Cross, who is here with me today, has undertaken to coordinate the naming of a bridge in each town after our veterans. I think it's a wonderful way to remember our veterans, and I hope that the committee feels that way as well. And before I do present the rest of my testimony, I would like to take this opportunity to present a gift to my constituent, Callista Cross. This is a recognition for her service and name and working hard to name bridges. You've seen her before, of course, here, but many bridges around the area after veterans. And so, Callista Cross, would you stand up? Thank you for your dedicated, selfless service to countless veterans with your efforts to rename numerous bridges, Veterans Memorial Bridge. This thing's great here.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Love it.
Okay, let me continue and also point out that she's my favorite Democrat. She's a wonderful person.
I take no offense, Senator.
I hope not. I hope not. Yeah. Well,
I was.
you can be my second favorite if you'd like, Senator Nanglo. I've always enjoyed working with you. Let's not rank them because Representative Crafts is wonderful as the rest of the committee members here. All right. Yeah. The next three bills are codifying the colloquial name for each bridge of the bridges. You'll notice I brought forth an amendment. My office was originally under the impression that these bills already had names and were waiting for signs. The MDOT notified me that these bridges never had official names. The amendment includes the official naming of these bridges. So in your work session, take note of that. LD 2184, I'm going to continue and finish in one testimony as you asked. LD 2184 officially names the Warrens Bridge in Cornish and South Hiram. The Warrens Bridge is named after Colonel Joseph Warren. He owned a grist mill off a pond near this bridge. Both Hiram and Cornish noted that when this bridge was first built in 1929, it had a sign displaying the name Warrens Bridge. The bridge serves as an important link between the two communities, and officially naming it will help memorialize the history of this area. LD 2185 officially names the East Limington Bridge. Both Limington and Standish noted the need for better signage to denote the bridge. Town of Standish said that the lack of signage leads to confusion for individuals unfamiliar with the area, particularly in situations requiring navigation, directions, or emergency response. Leamington noted that they believe the bridge will help residents and visitors alike. The East Limington Bridge sits on the border of Leamington and Standish and crosses, I call it the infamous Leamington Rapids. If you haven't been to the Leamington Rapids, it's an amazing place, kind of lots of stones down there and very shallow but fast moving current. And there's a place where you can jump in and ride the current for probably around 50 yards. It's almost like going to a, some kind of a, a Disney event or something. It's hilarious. And people do that in the summer. It's a lot of fun. LD 2186 officially names the Canal Bridge in Standish. The Canal Bridge spans the Presumpscot River and the Presumpscot River Canal. This is a hand dug, I understand, canal that was dug in Standish back a century ago. Town of Standish would like the signage to distinguish this bridge and aid in navigation. Bridge is on Route 35, sees a lot of traffic each day from both commuters and visitors exploring the Sebago Lake region. Canal Bridge spans a section of Cumberland and Oxford. It was completed in 1830. I do have that here. Canal followed the Presumpscot River before diverging in Westbrook to flow towards Portland Harbor. The 27 locks on the canal, in addition to the lock on the Songo River, made it possible to transport goods from Harrison to Portland by boat. The naming of the bridge after this canal is a great way to highlight the Sebago Lake region's history of innovation and economic development. For these reasons, I urge you to support these bills, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you very much to the committee.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Senator Libby?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Libby.
Yes, Representative.
Can we just quickly go over which towns we have letters for? I'm finding myself a little bit confused. I just want to make sure that we have the right
Yes,
support.
I think that the letters have been submitted for all bills. And so you should have been distributed in your folders, letters for each of those. So, yeah, I do admit that giving testimony and putting that all together is confusing. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Additionally, is there language submitted to change the names? I think what we have in our folder is the original, the erecting signs versus language that actually designates a name for these sections.
Yeah, we were talking about, I believe that's related to the Department of Transportation's request to us to amend
Okay,
these. So that's something you'll have to do in work session.
okay, all
Yeah.
right, great,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any other questions for Senator Libby?
My pleasure.
Seeing
Thank you.
none, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of any of these three bills? Four bills?
Senator Nangle, Representative Crafts, and esteemed members of the Joint Standing Committee on the Transportation. My name is Callista Cross, and I think you might remember me from last year. And I live in Cornish, and I am here today in strong support of the LD 21, 83, 84, 85, and 86 bridges. And Jim said most everything that needed to be said, but I'd just like to add a few words if I may. On the naming of the Little River Bridge in the town of Cornish, the Cornish Veterans Memorial Bridge. This would be really appreciated if it passed. It's taken me 2 years to get through my town, and finally the town and the select people come to an agreement that it's time we got a bridge named after our veterans. And on the Warrens Bridge between the town of Hiram and the town of Cornish, I remember going across that bridge so many times. And there used to be a sign there. And after DOT did some repair work there, then the sign was never put back up. And I worked with DOT. We were trying to find out if we could find a picture or something about that sign, and we couldn't find anything there. But it's a historic bridge. It's named after a captain. And so because I was naming bridges at this time, then I felt that maybe we ought to see if we can put a sign back up over there, the Warrens Bridge sign. So that's what I'm here for today, to see if we can get the Warrens Bridge sign back up that used to be there years ago. And then the East Leamington Bridge between the town of Standish and the town of Leamington. There's a lot of activity that goes on there. And it took a few meetings with both towns, Standish and Leamington, deciding what we wanted to do. And because there's no signs up on any of these bridges today that I'm presenting to you. And I thought, why not put a sign up so people will know that when they go over that bridge that they can see what this bridge name is. And so this East Leamington Bridge, both towns of Standish and Leamington came to an agreement that we want to put a sign up. It's a beautiful bridge, and there's a lot of activity there. There's swimming, there's kayaking, there's a trail there that goes all the way alongside of the river, and people go tubing there, and it's just such a nice place. And to give it a sign would kind of add to its looks and what it does. And then on the Canal Bridge in the town of Standish, they thought the council people thought this was a very good idea to put a sign up there. And what brought it to my attention was that it's just such a beautiful canal, and the bridge there is so nice, and it would be looked so nice to put a sign up saying that, it's showing that it was a canal bridge. And I just got back from a trip from Holland, and you won't believe all the canals I saw there. And so when I got back to Cornish, I set up a meeting with Standish because I had to let them know we're going to have a little canal bridge in Standish if you agree with it. So it might be a smaller version of what's in Holland, but it would be nice to have a sign put up there. So with all this said, I hope you ought to pass all of that. I thank you for your time, and you probably will see me here again next year because I'm working on some more bridges. And it's nice to know that other towns are doing the same thing. And let's go all the way up to the Worcester County if we have to, a Veterans Bridge and signs on the bridge so we know what these bridges are called. Thank you very much for your time. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Cross. I would just say, I think we have something like 4,000 bridges in the state of Maine, and there might not be enough signs for all of those, but thank you for all of your work.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to testify in favor of any of these bills? Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to testify in opposition? Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to testify either for nor against? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on these four bills. Senator Farren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we move into work session on LD 2183.
We have a motion and a second to enter work session on LD 2183. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous of those present. Senator Farren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Out of these four bills we have in front of us, LD 2183, in my opinion, clearly follows our procedure, right? It is to rename the Little River Bridge, even though the DOT said that it didn't have a name. It was the structure 2465. And we had the town of Cornish, specifically the Cornish Memorial Veterans Bridge. So everything follows our typical process that we go through. So I would make a motion of ought to pass an LD 2183.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Representative Farren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I mean,
Hey, I don't know who should be more insulted.
you know who you are. And God, we don't need another Farren.
I'm gonna support this, but I needed to say something that we as a committee really need to look at this. I'm as big a supporter of veterans as anybody in this building. But when we name every single building, every single bridge, a veterans bridge, it loses its effect, in my opinion. And we just keep naming every bridge. So should we just rename every bridge in Maine, the Veterans Bridge, and get it out of the way? It's frustrating. We've had over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, 20 or 30 of these. We've had ones come forward. I think one that we'll probably do at work session, the Warren Bridge was Colonel Warren. It's specific people in these towns, in these areas that have roots to that town, veterans. And I think that's something that it really should be saved for, not just a generic naming. And I think that's something that as a committee, we need to look at. It's kind of, I don't want to say getting out of hand, but that's the only words that I can describe it as getting out of hand. And I really wish that, we had the Roxbury Fry Bridge people here, several veterans, the veterans groups, the towns, and that I get. But it just seems though we keep having namings to have namings and not having a naming and have veterans in the town here talking about how important it is for that area and everything else. But like I said, I'll support this, but it's something the committee really needs to look at, that we just really shouldn't just name bridges to name bridges that don't have more direct ties, in my opinion.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none? 83. Have we moved into work session? Yes. Okay. Okay. We have a motion ought to pass. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous of those present.
This one is.
No, there is a letter. It's
Okay, all right, that's fine.
So, you know, can we make that, you okay with that?
sure.
Thank you, Chairs. Just for the folks that brought these forward, that the other three, I would suggest that we take a little time and wait for the work session on that specifically. And I think we give the sponsor a chance to react. Like with 2184, the original intent was to replace signs, right? And even though we got that clarification, if you look at the letter I got in front of me from the town of Hiram, it says replacing the signs. I think we ought to just make sure that we've got the proper letters and the proper pieces to go through and do that piece of it if the committee so chooses.
Okay. So we're gonna, public hearing is over, work session for the bill we're gonna vote on is over. We're good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
All right, we are going to move into our 1:30 scheduled presentation by the Department of Transportation on the work plan. Welcome, Commissioner Dowdy. Welcome, Commissioner.
Thank you. You guys all set? Ready to go? All right. I'll try to, I have a handout that we'll pick up halfway through. Try to make this somewhat brief. It's a large book. I know there's a lot of details. I know most of you have been through one before, but just a couple of things maybe to start off with. One thing we're very proud of at DOT is this is pretty much everything we do. Somewhere in this book, you can find out how much we spend on safety, our internal process. You can determine how much we spent on human resources. We really try to capture everything we do in this book for transparency and just really understanding the money that comes to us so that we project coming to us and how we utilize that money. There are a couple things that I kind of just want to lay out at the beginning. One of the things that we've talked about with Deputy Taylor is really finding better ways of describing how this is generated. I think over the years, we've done that in a lot of different ways, but there's still a lot of mystery around asset management. There's a lot of mystery around things like special appropriations. So how do all those things go in, and how do things bubble up into this book, and where our investment is really charged? So that's one thing we'll be working on the next probably 6 to 8 months, really trying to shed a little more light into that black box that was never intended to be black. But at times I could certainly see how it would be. If I talk to my wife, who's a very smart lady, I'm sure she doesn't understand how a lot of this generates, and yet she listens to me right around and talk about it all the time. So we'll work on that. As I mentioned, this is pretty much everything we do, and I'll kind of go through that. What this book represents, and it's a very large book this year, and it's always a very large book, but what a lot of it's doing is just really maintaining what we have in the state. As Representative Crafts mentioned a moment ago, we have a lot of bridges. We have the state's responsible for around 2,800 bridges and minor spans, 8,800 miles of highway, and all the pieces and bits and chunks that go along with that, plus the ferry service. We're supporting transit. So a lot of this, and we'll go through that today, is really maintaining what we have. It's at times it feels exciting. It feels like there's a lot of new stuff in here, and there is around select items that we can find special funding for or additional funding for. You know, there's 10 miles of Mountain Division Trail in here to build. So that's a new asset. There's new transit services in here in Scarborough, and microtransit service will be piloting, working with the Turnpike. So there are new things, but a lot of what we're doing is really maintaining what we have. And we'll get into the different levels of investment and why we're in that level, and how we might over time find a ways to do something other than that. The other thing is this book's built on a series of pillars. A lot of what's in here, and we'll talk about that as we go through, are projections of funding in very uncertain times. And I can't say the most, because a lot of my years at DOT, it's felt like they were uncertain times. So there's always uncertain times. But everybody in the public needs to understand this is built on a series of projections that go way beyond the state budget. There's about 1.5 years of support for that in here. There's about 1.5 years that's not supported by a state budget at this moment. Federal funding, there just got an appropriations bill to get us through the end of September, but there's no reauthorization, a 5-year reauthorization to really show where the federal programs are going. You know, we kind of keep our pulse on things. We try to do our best to guess where we're going. If you kind of think on a lot of those things, it's like a plate on a string swinging in the wind, and you got a snowball and you're trying to hit the plate. You got to throw ahead of the plate to hit the plate when it hits, but you never know exactly where it's going to be. So there's a lot of that, and we'll get into it. This book contains 2,798 items in it. And again, everything we do. It invests about $4.5 billion across the state. A lot of that money is money that comes through us, and we direct towards a project, towards a provider. But a bunch of that money is going from the federal government or some other entity to a provider, and we're matching it. We show the whole package so that you and others in the state can really understand where the investment, public investment, other than beyond the routine municipal investments going in transportation. So it gives people a full transportation picture. Just how to read the book. At the beginning, and we'll get into this a little bit, there's a letter from me, and then there's the introduction, which is similar to previous introductions. There's a tab on how you read the plan. Then there are county tabs. And probably what's most important about those county tabs, the best way for you to find something or see what's in your areas, one, you can ask Megan and we'll give it to you, or your towns can go on the website and receive it. And because in these tabs, you have many investments that cover 2 or 3 or 4 towns. They're in alphabetical order. Sometimes they, a project that might start in Bucksport and end in Prospect would be in 2 counties. So it'd be Prospect, Verona, Bucksport, Verona, and Prospect. Will it be listed under Bucksport because that's the first one in the alphabet, so it would be listed in another county. But if you go online, you can search for specific municipalities. It'll give you every investment in it, regardless if it's the first alphabetical one. So the county tabs are helpful, but it's probably more helpful to go online. That'll be up tomorrow in a prominent place. Beyond that, at the back, and this is probably really where it's easiest to find in here, there are statewide capital projects. There are projects that either that it affects so many towns it can't be listed, or it's something that's mobile, like a ferry, right? That may serve a town here and then later serve another town. And so there's a tab on statewide capital. So capital investments that affect multiple towns. The statewide operations, that's where our operations are. That's where operations of transit providers that affect many towns. Those are under those tabs. That's where you could find out how much we spend on internal safety and things like that. Then there's a tab for special programs, and that's kind of new in the last couple of work plans. That tab is really generated around programs that we've been asked to deliver that aren't our traditional programs. Things like resiliency programs, things like coastal restoration programs. So they're not completely absent of transportation, but it's something we wouldn't normally do. And they tend to be programs that come through a special appropriation, usually a state appropriation, sometimes federal with NOAA. They stay for a while. When they run out, they run out. So those are the special programs in the back. And I was just going to walk you quickly through the introduction, if that's okay, kind of where the money's coming from, the assumptions that we've made in developing those. So I think probably the first page, if you could find your way to, would be 2 of 22. Two of 22. Yep, page 2. It should be a graphic in the upper left corner, multicolored graphic. A couple of things we're doing that affect a lot of this program, especially on the highway and bridge side. This last year, we generated a new complete streets policy, and that complete streets policy is really focused on where we put bicycle pedestrian facilities, build those into our projects. Before there were it was a very broad set of statements. We'll consider them whenever we do a project, and projects of this type would have a general. This new complete streets policy really drives to the scope of the project. If you're doing a bridge replacement, there are opportunities that might not avail themselves if you're doing a deck rehab or a wearing surface. There are opportunities when you do a heavy treatment to pavement treatment where you can incorporate things that you might not be able to incorporate into light capital paving. So the new process really looks at the scope of what we're doing and then what could be built into that. And it really puts our planning department up front, planning bureau up front, in doing scoping reports and building those into the cost of the project in the future. So you'll see some of these and the cost may be a little different than you've seen in the past, but some of it's incorporating it into those. We've also classified every state and stated highway in the state in one of these categories that you see in this graphic, from rural to urban. And that's for 2 reasons. One is part of complete streets. You know, how are you going to look at a rural village, downtown rural village, where the store is, there's some buildings, and there may be some common space compared to that rural section of highway that there's not a house on at all. And how do you build that into complete street? So that's one way we use it. That context drives, the context and the scope drive what of those asset amenities we add to it. The other place that it comes into effect that's really important, and it relates to this plan, is how we view speed limits. You know, in the past, we go out and measure, and we still do, measure the speed, 85th percentile. That's where people are comfortable driving. You can post the speed limit, anything you want. People are probably going to drive similarly, most people. So we used to go out and measure it, look at the geometry of the road, look at other safety aspects, and set the speed limit. Now, instead of starting at the 85th percentile, we look at the context. What is this road? You know, Bruce used to say, road needs to know what it wants to be when it grows up. Well, let's figure out what it should be, what it's serving. Is it serving a village, or is it serving a rural section of highway with no homes and no pedestrian generators, or is it serving an urban center? Start with that. Try to figure out how it should function. Determine how it is functioning and the safety aspects around it. But then, and this gets to the capital part, what can we do to make that road function the way it should? If those of you that have driven through Dresden on Route 27, you come down the hill into this would be a rural village. There's a store, there's a church, there's a restaurant, it's just up for sale, but there's a bunch of stuff right there, post office. And yet there's 12-foot lanes and 12-foot shoulders. People go through that village very, very fast, not at the posted speed limit. So those are the kind of places we need to look at. How do we make that place function the way it should function? So those are just some of the themes of things that we've done this last year that have impacted a lot of what's in this book. On page 4 of 22, it shows there's a pie chart and the subsequent pages of where funding comes from, where those projections, where the sources of the projected funding that we're going to build this program on are built. And if you look at the upper right-hand corner and the greens and yellows, those are state sources. So the largest state source at $875 million and 19% of the program is the highway fund, dedicated highway fund that's dedicated to highway and bridge activities. So that's the majority of that. Beyond that, there's Transcap residual. We did a Transcap bond we'll talk about in a moment. Part of building that Transcap bond was we're going to put a couple revenue sources in. We have to put in twice what we anticipate the debt service to be. At the end, once we pay the debt service, that money comes back. Some of that money can be used for dedicated highway and bridge, but some of that can be used for multimodal elements of the program. So that gives us some flexibility. You'll see the liquor sales tax coming in brown, auto-related sales tax, 40%. We've talked about that in a previous bill a moment ago, coming into the program there. The Transcap bond of $250 million. We'll talk about that in a little bit more. Multimodal revenues, things like the fees that we charge to go up and down the Penobscot Narrows Observatory, ferry service, fare box, things like that. And then there's general fund, and we'll get into that. I'll skip that for a moment at $206 million, and we'll come back to that because that relates to the handout that I gave you. When you go into the blues, the first one is what we're projecting for highway and bridge. We talked a moment ago about we now have an appropriations bill which just continues IAJ, that reauthorization. Congress is working on a new reauthorization. We don't know what that's going to be, but we track a lot of things that are going on. We try to anticipate what we think we'll get in highway and bridge funding, and that's what's represented here. What Congress actually does in the end, we're not all sure, and that may affect this plan in the end. And the same goes for the next wedge. That's FTA funding that's coming to us, and we're sending out to transit providers throughout the state. Then there's FTA, the lighter blue is FTA funding that goes to directly to the transit providers. Then oftentimes we're matching it with the multimodal funds. So that's funding that goes directly to a provider and then comes back. Then there's special federal funding. We've talked about that a lot. We talked about it at the beginning of this and during my confirmation. Those are things like grants. Those are things like congressionally directed spending. Those are the places where we're really doing this transformational, bringing Maine towards that 21st century, where we can really make changes. That's not just asset management. And that's a big chunk of money. That's $505 million. Probably have a little bit less in the future, but it's still a large chunk of money. The upper left corner is others. So the first one, the kind of bright red one, is municipal funding. A lot of our programs you match, especially those programs that we'll talk about in a moment, that where a municipality can want to participate and prioritize a project higher or quicker than we would, like the municipal planning initiative, or they want to do some planning in their place to set themselves up for one of these special funding. So that's municipal match. And then the last stippled up at 11 o'clock there is funding that was in a previous program. We've already counted for it last work plan or something. And it's usually federal programs. It's usually federal projects that take a fair amount of time, sometimes 2, 3, 4 years, and it's often bridges. So it's demonstrating that funding is still in the program, but it's not new funding, and we're not taking credit for it a second time. So that's kind of the pie chart. And you know, those next pages talks a lot about those fund sources, how we made those projections, and the limitations around those. And I'd love to talk with any of you about those. I'd like to bring your attention, if you would, just to the handout that I handed you a moment ago.
Commissioner, can I ask a question?
Oh, absolutely, of course.
I'm familiar with the state fund piece and changes, but the formula funds, granted, if we don't have a federal budget, that
Mhm.
obviously causes a problem. But do those numbers from year to year shift dramatically?
They do, and they shift usually within an appropriations, I mean, within a reauthorization bill. There's usually some built-in growth, right? So they'll start out maybe each program's a little different, but some will grow, some don't. They don't change a lot. When they do change, or when they're likely to change, is when we're facing reauthorization. So beginning of IAJ, I know Bruce came in and talked a lot about grant programs, and formula funds were kind of frozen. They really didn't grow, and some actually diminished, got broken into other programs. So a large program may have had carve-outs that went somewhere else and then were distributed in a different way. So maybe the amount didn't change, but the flexibility changed. In other cases, it has changed. In this new reauthorization, we're not sure, but we've heard things from members of Congress and our national organizations that some of the grants may, some of the grant programs, some of the IAJ grant programs may go away, and that may flow back into formula. So formula may actually go up. They may also flow into other parts of USDOT that are not stuff that we would tap, like aviation and the new air traffic control system. So we're not really sure, but they're pretty stable for those periods, unless there's something weird happens in an appropriation. But this is really the uncertain time, going from one reauthorization 5-year bill to another.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question somewhere in there?
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. So we talked about, that was great. It was a great transition, because that's the uncertainty around the federal bill, and there's a whole bunch of things swirling around DC. Going down, and Megan and I and several other staff members are going down in 2 weeks to both meet with our national organization. We're also going to be meeting with our delegation, see where they see things going, where we might best put our money on special appropriations, things like that. So we'll hopefully get a little more of a pulse on where things are in 2 weeks when we all go to DC. So let's just talk about the state side a moment. If you look at this chart in front of you, what it is the state side. So it's really that upper green sliver. So it's capital funding. That's actually a portion of that upper green portion that's headed towards capital. So it's highway and bridge capital, it's multimodal capital. So it's really the portion of our state formula funds, and not, for lack of another term, that are headed towards the capital programs. And if you look across the bottom, the highway fund allocation is the green. And then on top of the green are one-time general fund infusions. And for the few years I was at the city, I know we had a couple general fund transfers, and there were other things that the governor and that you all were able to bring to bear to kind of fill that gap. And those were all one time. So they were either a biennial solution or an annual solution. So that's kind of the way things are. And if you think about that green wedge, and we'll talk about it a little bit when we talk about uses, that green wedge is always under stress. And the reason it's under stress is because before the green wedge gets on, the green column gets on this page, we're running operations. We're snow plowing, we're replacing culverts, we're ditching. All of the operational things that come along with running the system come off the top first. What's left is left for capital. So trucks cost more, salt costs more, fuel costs more, sand costs more, ditching costs more. That stress, highway fund's somewhat stable, right? Kind of goes up and down, but it's somewhat stable. But the stress on that from the operational side increases. So what's available to the green part, and if you kind of look from 2025 out projected to 2029, you'll see that decline. And most of that decline is just the demand on the operational side to plow the snow. Got some pretty good demand this winter on that side, right? That will continue. And if you read through the plan, it'll talk about sources like the liquor and the auto-related sales tax, that those are quickly being consumed. Those infusions are quickly being consumed by the growth and cost of fuel and vehicles and things.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Just so I understand, from fiscal year 25, where the highway fund allocation covered 59% of the annual need, you're suggesting that in fiscal year 29, it will cover 23% of the
I am.
need because of the ongoing increase in the cost of doing just the basic functions of the department.
Mhm. I mean, I think there are other reasons too, but that's probably the biggest stressor, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You know, and a lot of those operations are not capital-like, but they're like capital. They're things that are happening on that side that are drawing away from capital, right? Pulling away from capital.
And Commissioner,
Yes.
on those, like the chair was talking about how it's dropped and gone down because of the cost. But that's also anticipating none of the other stuff changing, right?
Yes.
So if liquor money went away or sales tax went away, then that all goes away.
Yeah, I think, yes, absolutely. There are a couple of things, when you read the plan, you'll see things like the cascade. There's a cascade component on the green wedges. We've anticipated, because cascade is the difference between revenue projections on the general fund side and what is actually received. We project that a little bit lower. So there's a little bit of things where we're being conservative in our projections, but the vast majority is what we've talked about. So it's not any structural change. It's just being conservative in our projections.
Is that why the yellow part on like 25 and 26 were bigger? Wasn't the cascade those years bigger? And
Yes.
I think was the
This
reason
year it
for
was
that.
actually 35 million. This program projects 5. So we're being conservative there because there are other stressors on it, and we don't know, you don't know where the economy is going and all those things. So we always project those a little bit less. Yes.
Thank you.
So the orange is, the solution for the last couple of years was Transcap, right? The $250 million Transcap bond. So that Transcap bond is shown in the orange, and we've spread it out over next year and the year after. And then a little bit of it spills into the end of this work plan, 2028. But 2028 is the place where the structural gap begins to rear its head again, right? So I know, I'm sorry, there aren't numbers on here, but the top of the orange in 2028 is about 80 million. The annual need, and we haven't grown that in the last 3 years for inflation. It's probably going to grow for inflation, but holding it steady because bids are kind of been pretty steady lately, is 240. So the difference between what we project in 26 and in 27, and without some infusion of something else in 2028, we'd be short about $160 million to stay static. And later we'll get into what we're buying with that 240 million in a moment. But so that just kind of gives you a sense. This work plan is not built on that 160. This work plan, to be conservative again, we built on again, that's probably is stretching, but we built this work plan on filling that gap with 130, not 160. I don't know that we'll get 130. I have no idea. I don't know where where that'll come up with. There are a couple avenues, bonding, a couple other things. There are conversations going on. I don't know what will fill that tank, but that tank's about $160 million hole. This plan represents 130 of that 160.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that number is not what's actually needed.
No,
That's just to do this.
to do this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit, what that actually buys.
Thank you, Commissioner. And so in the next year, you'll be returning to us with a new biennial budget proposing where that fill will come.
That is my
Is-
hope, yes.
Okay. Is there anything that this committee should anticipate? I know we can't predict the future. No one has a crystal ball,
Yeah.
but do you have any comments on what that could
I think
look like?
we're having a couple of discussions with the governor's office, and I'd be happy to come back. I'd like to have a little more of a discussion about where the governor thinks we can find some ways to fill that gap. So we've been having discussions, and I think just been a lot going around with supplemental and things. So I'm hoping to be back at some point. Yes.
And is there additional uncertainty, understanding that the chief executive will change,
Mhm.
right? It will be a new governor. Have and I think it's a comment.
Yes.
I don't have a question. Thank you.
I'll be back soon. How's that? The best, as soon as I can. Yes.
I actually have a question. Have we seen the effects in this plan of the tariffs?
In some
like for
cases.
Canadian steel or?
Yeah, in some places we have, but a lot of what we had in some kind of discrete places for us, and part of it due to Buy America. You know, we were already buying American steel for a lot of and American products due to our federal requirements. So in a lot of places, we haven't seen large, but in some places, especially state-only kinds of projects, some, yes.
Okay.
Not like towns and other entities, Turnpike and other entities, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I'm sorry, that's a bit unsatisfying and there's not a solution, but I just wanted to make this committee aware of, you know, this program is built on some pillars, and some of the pillars are solid and some of the pillars still need some work. So that's one.
Sure.
Thank you, Michelle. Just a quick question on that too.
Sure.
On the TransCap and on the payback of TransCap, and all that, you've dedicated funds for that. Is that already out of here, or is that something in the future we got to pay so much?
I believe we've removed the debt service from this capital piece, but I'll confirm that with Catherine. This is
But that's
really the
another
capital
reason
document.
why it's lower,
That's another that
because
is
we've got
another
to
reason.
pay for.
Absolutely. That's
2 years
great,
ago.
great point. Yes.
Thanks.
Yep. Senator?
Senator Farren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, we talk a little bit about, right, the increased costs and how that Pete is doing that, right?
Mhm.
Chipping away from that. And we have a lot of conversations around the State House about the policies that we institute. And the chair just mentioned tariffs, right? But is also, you know, fuel costs, increased culverts with the climate piece. I mean, do you folks look at, as we eat up more of that percentage, where those costs? I've heard, you know, the cost of equipment, the cost of labor, paid family leave. I
Mhm.
mean, all of these things that we do, it's not just one silver bullet or one piece that's driving that. But do you have to look at the percentages of what increases those costs and what the factors are to get you there? Because I mean, there's a lot of different drivers on that.
There
Is that-
are. Yeah, and so yes, Catherine does that every time we build a biennial budget. Every time we estimate the resources for this, we do exactly that. The first step in building a new work plan, and usually in late August, early September, is really start to develop what those resources are, what we think they are, and then what's coming off the top for all of those things. You know, you get an NTSB report, you know, a year or two after a plane crashes, it's never one item, right? There's 10 things that went into that plane crashing. And I think like everything else in life, usually it's a combination of many things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Guys all set? All right. We'll get into let's kind of move on to the uses a little bit. Maybe I'll skip a few things. Can we go, I think page 12 of 22 might be a good place to start. There's some other stuff before that would be good to, if you're interested, to peruse through about why we program what we program. But a moment ago, we talked about, you know, what we're buying with this plan. And we talked about the different levels, and you'll see some Van Notisms in here, like MacGyver mode, and then pragmatic progress, and then aspirational. So we really divide when we do annually, and we'll start publishing those along with a report card, a state of the system. And we've been doing that analysis for a while, but we're going to put that into a document coming up for the next year. So there'll be a state of the system. Where's the system? Then we'll build the plan around that. But what we've been doing in the state of the system, and as we go from resource projections into resource allocation, is we kind of look at 3 different levels in all of our programs. We look at MacGyver mode, and MacGyver mode, I think you may have heard him say in the past, you know, competently managing the decline of the system. And that's really what that is. In MacGyver mode, portions of the systems are degrading. And how do you invest in those portions to kind of keep the parachute out so that when you hit the ground, you don't break both legs, right? You kind of declining down, but how do you decline in such a way that's in a controlled fashion? So we invest in bridges. We would invest in bridges this way. We'd invest in pavements this way to manage that decline. That is not where we are with this program as it's built right this moment. The next one up is pragmatic progress. Geez, I'm tongue-tied today. And that's really looking at where can we invest in things to keep things static, to keep our system the way it is today for the most part. So pavements don't generally decline, bridges don't generally decline, or if they decline, they're declining over a period with the idea that they'll come up because the network is all different ages and things come in batches, right? So how we're looking out that long-term horizon and trying to manage things so they stay where they are today or slightly improvement. And out of pragmatic progress, that's where we're doing a few transformational things. We're adding a transit service. We're adding maybe at some point a Falmouth bus station or something else where we're finding special funding, investing our planning activities so we can make some transformational progress into the 21st century. So we're not on decline, we're on stay on flat ground, but then make those investments, those key crucial investments to improve. The last one's aspirational, and it's not as aspirational as most aspirational plans. It's really aspirational. What could be the best we think Maine could do for itself? And what do we think Mainers would accept? Mainers don't typically accept when it comes to investment, public investment, an A+. Mainers want something. We're a bunch of good old Yankees that want some ingenuity and want something that's improving and better tomorrow, but better tomorrow in a practical manner. So our aspirational levels aren't shooting the moon. It's really a place where we think most Mainers would like to be. This plan and the last one are really in that middle pragmatic progress. We're holding our own, making key investments. And I think that's just an important concept what Representative Perry was asking about earlier.
Speaking of bridges, on average, how long do you expect a bridge to last?
But to bring bridge engineers in to give you a good answer, but I think a lot of them are 80. The new bridges, the new large bridges, we're shooting for 100 or more. There are, and that gets to some important points in here. There are points where those need to be rehabilitated at the right moment in time. One that we're debating, this is a good one for discussion. You'll probably hear about out and about, is the Casco Bay Bridge. That was an enormous investment when I first came to the department. So that's, it's getting on to 30 years old. It's time to paint those components and do key rehab. If we don't do that, that bridge isn't going to last as we'd expect it, or we're going to be putting enormous investment in the future. So that's one of those key asset management things. We can get a good life out of a bridge, but you've got to hit it. You got to hit a deck and they'll beat me when I get back down there. But you got to hit a new deck in 40 years. You got to do in between there. You've got to do wearing surfaces and membranes. You got to do paint. You got to seal concrete every 5 or 10 years. Those things have to happen to get that at full life. And that's what a lot of this plan is about.
Representative Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, and this isn't an right now thing or over the last few years. This has been a long-term issue that we really haven't supported highways and transportation in Maine like we have to, or at some point it's what's the level below MacGyver mode? Because we're if we don't get serious as a legislature, as governors, as far back as I can remember, this isn't something new that we've had issues with this. At some point, are we actually going to actually fund highways like we should be funding them? Or is it just going to be, are we going to keep MacGyver moding it, and then you'll have to have in 3 years or 4 years or 6 years another level below that that's not even keeping up, or and you jump out of the plane without a parachute type thing. How do we get to that point where we can instill that we have to invest? And the governor did a great thing 3 years ago when we put in the vehicle sales tax and started that process. But at some point, we've got to get serious about not just filling the money that we need to fill this, but to actually be putting money in for the actual need. And how do we get there? Or how do we convince people that, you know, around the horseshoe and in the chambers, in the governor's office, whomever that is down the road, that you have to do this?
I think there's a couple things there. I can't tell you. I think unfortunately it lies with all of you on whether we do it or not. I think, but it lies with me and my counterparts on how to paint the picture. And I don't know that we've always painted the picture as well as we could. We've tried, you're close enough something, you see it from the inside. Maybe it's time we start looking from the outside and how do we portray it? You're absolutely right. In between this MacGyver and aspirational, if you're in between, if you're not at at pragmatic progress, if you're in between or if you're a little bit low, you will be in MacGyver, right? Because that's the thing. If you're not holding static, and bridges are a great example. If you're not holding and you're not investing enough, there's only one way you're going to go. You're going to keep going down because that underinvestment, you don't hit. Casco Bay is a good example. You don't hit that paint at the right time, and then you're doing something else, and then you're doing something else, or you don't hit the light pavement at the right moment in time, so you're doing a heavy treatment or you're rehabilitating the highway. Those costs slide down and escalate if you're not investing at the right level. I do feel better that we're at least investing, or at least we're projecting to invest, not investing, but projecting to invest at that pragmatic progress. My concern, as we've spent most of this time talking about, is the federal government going to be able to step up and give the states the authority and the flexibility to maintain what they can and the funding? And can we eventually fix this gap or not? I think part of how we get there and expressing ourselves gets to generating a state of the system, and that'll probably be somewhat of a technical document, but generating a document along with it that talks about, I think you probably can remember back when we generated 6-year plans. Those 6-year plans kind of looked out. So it's not that we don't still look out that far. We look out farther, especially with bridges. But we did a Cobb's report a number of years ago that we gave to this committee. In that Cobb's report, it showed bridges in poor condition, depends on how you look at the chart, but increasing, more poor condition before they would start to recover. I think we need to continue to catalog that, but actually make that part of some documents, some talking points available to people like you. We were providing those, but they've never really been in a consumable way. And I think that's something we talked about, how we generate these. I think we need to talk about how we talk about the system and humanize it. A lot of people talk about, when we're talking about bypasses or new connectors across the country, they're all talking about minutes of delay. But what does a minute of delay or a half an hour of delay mean to the soccer mom or the soccer dad that can't pick up their kids and they have to move their daycare? And we've got to humanize a lot of this, what this means to Raymond, the town of Raymond, in the long term in their economic development. So I think turning some of that stuff around and really giving something consumable so people can make good decisions.
Follow up, Mr. Chair. Sure. Also, I mean, in looking out, and I'm sure you're doing it already, and I know that the DOT in New Hampshire's done a great job, but Piscataqua River Bridge is closing in on 60 years, roughly. What was the projection when that was built on lifespan?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even dare, if you'd even dare to guess what the replacement of that bridge would cost. If
we've been guessing a lot. It is a guess.
And so how does that process on something like that?
Yeah.
So is the lifeblood of Maine?
It is the front door. It is the screen door on Main, right? You can't get into the house unless you get through the screen door. So things like that. There's a good example. The bridges on 295 are getting to that age where within our horizon of view, we're going to need to invest in those. And can you only imagine going in and doing 2 or 3 of those bridge decks at a time before you get them all done, what that's going to do for impacts in the greater Portland area. What's Kittery going to do to the entire Gaddis River Bridge or High Level Bridge? What's that going to do to the entire state? You'll actually find in here under Kittery a project that we're working on currently to look at Piscataqua River Bridge from two aspects. One, what would happen if something were to happen to that bridge? Somebody parks a vehicle up there and says there's something really bad in that vehicle and you can't use it for a week in July. What would we, New Hampshire and all the communities do? Then the second part of that is, yeah, there's going to be a point where bridge decks are needed, where we have a painting project you'll see in here to paint the bridge, but something more dramatic is going to need to be looked at to invest in, and it's going to have some large impacts. And then ultimately, entropy always wins, right? Entropy wins. You know, that's a physics. You know, that's a disorder eventually wins. The bridge will have a service life. So this study is really looking at all of those things and how do we manage around them, and what do we need to do to manage around them and always keep our front door open. So we are looking at those. We have a specific study to look exactly at a number of those things.
How much of this work plan is done by DOT employees and how much is contracted out?
So the plan itself, physically developing the plan, is almost all DOT employees, just physically generating it, doing the analysis. We do have some contractors that help us with some things, but managing bridges, understanding the life of our network of bridges, pavements is us. The part that we do, and it's not as much, well, some of it's contracted, but most of it isn't contracted, the part where other entities are engaged. It's the metropolitan planning organizations, the regional planning organizations, municipalities. So there's a lot of entities that have input into this, but the physical generation of this is DOT.
Okay. The generation of the plan is DOT.
Yep.
As far as the work that's in the
Oh,
plan,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
how much is that of that is?
So I'll have to get you, I'll get your percentage. But it is, we use contractors for a lot of things. So upfront, we just talked about the Piscataqua River Bridge. We're driving that. We have a contractor doing that study. Contracting physical work, most of the capital work is all by contract. The part I'd have to get your percentage on is the amount of design and construction oversight that we do. And that varies over time. We use contractors to kind of vary the amount of work so that we can buffer staff. So we have long-term staff, we have stability of staff. I think I know what the number is, but I won't give it to you today. But so the vast majority of the capital things in here are delivered through contractor. Not all, but the vast.
Which is why, not that I need to bring up other legislation, but if we were talking about providing those services by DOT employees, that would be part of a baseline budget. Right? If we had personnel filling all of the roles of all of the pavers and all of those contracted services, that would be built into a budget year after year, right? We would hold on to those. But in this case, these projects, the money that's going into funding these and all of the staff will fall under capital and we'll start at zero every budget cycle.
I think there's definitely a portion of that, especially around the design. You know, we have our design consultants but all of that is, let me back up. All of that is built into, on the capital side. Remember, on the capital side, all other personal services over here. On the capital side, when we were talking about baseline budgets the other day, is taking that same concept and moving it onto the capital side. So all of those elements would be part of that baseline budget, yes, as it exists today. Yep. I'm sorry. I get my stuff caught up in all other personal services. Everybody does.
Representative Ankles.
Thank you. This is on a much more pragmatic level. So when the work plan came out, what I did was highlighted everything with the word Brunswick in it.
There you go.
And put it into a Facebook post and sent it off to everybody in the town so they could see what are you gonna see when it warms up. And inevitably what happens is and what has just happened is that people have been like, oh, well, what about over here where it needs X or Y? And so my question to you is when it's a DOT level thing and not a town level thing,
Yep.
what's my channel to suggest to put something on your team of engineers' radar for potential future incorporation into the work plan down the road?
Sure, there's a couple things around that. One, what I'll do is I'll have Megan bring up, because she'll be up here probably before I will, our rack card for our planners. So each planner has a region. You have a planner that affects Brunswick, or that works on Brunswick and works on the surrounding towns.
Landry.
That's the best avenue, because that planner may already been talking to the town, or may already be talking to somebody else. So that's probably the best venue in. The other thing I might do when you get a moment after tomorrow is amend that post or add another post and send out the online version. And the only reason I say that is there may be things that start in Topsom that end up in Brunswick, or start in Bowden that ends up in Brunswick, that you might have missed. And if people want to go in and online and put in Brunswick, they'll get everything, even if it starts in another community.
It's true. Yeah, I linked to that in the comments, so that it's less likely to mess up the algorithm, and so more people will see the post.
Yeah.
But thank you. That's very
Excellent.
helpful.
Great.
Can I ask a question about a specific project?
Sure, I'll answer if I
On page
can.
42, there is Fry Island Raymond Ferry General Multimodal Improvements, the same amount for 26, 27, and 28. Is that just ferry rehab, or?
I will double check, but I believe it's landside stuff, but I will double check.
Okay.
And I think that's been a long-standing tradition that we've done. Oh, that's not the person I was expecting to see back there. She's headed.
She probably knows.
She's headed out in the field tonight, so she won't be back till late. I will get you that.
Okay.
I believe
Just curious.
that's a long-standing set number, I believe, but
Yeah, I just wondered.
yeah.
Um,
244415. 244415.
And then also I noted something about in Gorham, the Portland West this might be the Regional Holistic and Modally Based Planning Study for Traffic West of Portland, total estimated DOT costs of study. Is that the Gorham bypass?
It's what used to be, yes. It's really looking at all modes, and, we had Bill, last session, we talked about moving into looking at all modes, looking at all solutions, looking at a broader look. But yes, that is from Portland to Gorham and beyond, really understanding what the transportation issues are there and what solutions might be best brought to bear, bringing the whole toolbox. Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, kind of on that same subject. How is DOT looking at all the routes? Because places like Wyndham, Gorham, Standish, Buxton, all that are building up so much. How is current infrastructure gonna accommodate as people from Portland area or whatever, or move out even further and further? How's that gonna come into the future?
Well, I think that's really what a lot of the study, at least for the study area, that eventually ends in places like Standish and Wyndham. And so I think it's really looking at that whole bag of tools and what is the best solution and what are the growth rates, and how we might manage those things as in a holistic fashion. So don't want to talk about the solutions before we get the study too far underway, but yes, we've certainly invited Wyndham to the table to talk about whatever happens, how does that affect them, as well as Standish and some of the outlying communities. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, because I know there was an issue the other day. They had a fire and had to close River Road.
Yep.
And at 9 o'clock in the morning, you close River Road, you've got a mess through Gorham, out the other way, probably all the way to Gray. So that's always an issue out through there.
And I think you'll find in here too, there's that North Wyndham section that we've talked about, the special funding to build the backage roads and put some median barrier up 302 to get that road back to what it needs to be when it grows up, and let some other roads take that.
Has there been any look at like increasing any maybe traffic patterns or whatever to funnel maybe some of that more of that North Wyndham traffic to Gray and to the Turnpike or anything like that. Because I know 115 through that way is not a huge road. It's a good road, but
Yep.
has anything been looked at? out
I
through
don't
that
know
way?
if anything's been looked at recently. We have in the past or in my career. I can find out if we're taking a look at it again. Yeah.
Representative White.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I don't have much to talk about because there's only a page and a half in Piscataquis County. Anyway, we still have the last dirt road on your system.
We do. We do. I used to be in charge of half of it. Yeah,
You're not forgetting about us, I assume,
I am not forgetting about
because
it.
that's a very large area. I only see a page and a half out of this book.
Such. Understood. Maybe next year we'll give you more to comment on. How's it? There we go.
And then the years are calendar years, not fiscal
Calendar
years.
year, yes. Which is confusing, it's federal fiscal year, state fiscal year and calendar year, yeah. But just for the general public, it's easy on calendar year.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment that I've been in business for several years. My family's been in business for 65 years, and looking at your revenue projections of what you have to work with, given the plan that you are demanded, if this was a business and I was the new person running it, where you have just been appointed to your position, I would take that job. But I wouldn't do that for anything, given what you are being presented to work with your projections. So I really appreciate the fact that you're taking your years of knowledge to try to apply it to this scenario that you have a huge funding gap with. And I just wanted to thank you for being willing to do what you do.
You're welcome. I've worked for 4 commissioners and they've all, this chart was different, but this has existed since I've worked at DOT. John Melrose, we used to have general fund bonding to the tune of 80 million, and 60 was highway and 20 was, so this has existed for as long as I've been here. It's just the gap gets bigger, the numbers get bigger. So the last 4 also took the job under the same condition. So I'm not the first one, but probably the last 5, but at least 4 I don't know of.
Any other questions? Okay. Anything else you want?
Thank you. Have a great day.
Anything else you want to
guys.
say?
I don't think so. We can get into other parts of it individually, or when we come back and talk about budgets, I'm sure we'll get more deeply into all of this. So.
Okay. Thanks.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
Before we do language review, you want to just text her and let her know? So we missed Tuesday. If we met next Thursday, would people be able to be here for that? Next Thursday?
I see we have an email that says we're coming in Wednesday, the following week, 25th, to meet with AFA, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
We got AFA meeting on the 25th.
Why don't we do that stuff on the 25th as well?
Sounds perfect. Is that okay? Okay.
And we're gonna be here 3 days next that week, and when we come back, it's those things.
We can't,
Yep.
Messing up our week off.
we can't do the turnpike stuff because the department would also like to be here for it, and all of their staff are gone that week. But I
The week of
don't,
the
of the 23rd.
Third.
But I don't think we have anything we even need. Like, I think we could add some of that to.
Okay. We're going to take a little bit of a break and we're going to let Senator Peirce get here. Thanks.
Yes, this is the security barriers in buses one. All it is you'll see it's not the whole thing again. It's just the updated definition of, because that seemed to be the issue that there was lots of questions about with the definition of large, heavy-duty bus. So now it says that it's a bus that has a gross vehicle weight of 26,001 pounds or greater and has a length of 30 feet or greater. So to be clear, it has to have both conditions in order to be defined as a large heavy duty bus. Are there any questions with that updated definition?
Is that reflective of?
Yes, we went back and worked on it, and it makes sure we don't capture this little buses at Sugarloaf or the ones around town, because these are heavy, but there are the shorter, we had it at 40. I can't remember. I think we had
35.
35, excuse me.
40.
And that if you go to 30, you just capture more of these transit buses that need the renovations on it. But it doesn't add, and I talked to 3 or 4 people, doesn't add that many. So our $1 million doesn't need to be even considered changing. Yeah.
And you do have the fiscal note, speaking of what that fiscal note will look like. That has also been attached.
So everybody's good with that? Excellent. 1477.
This was the one about the pilotage commission, and that subsidizing the cost for operating a ferry between Bar Harbor and Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. The title will change to be an act to subsidize pilotage costs for ferries operating between Bar Harbor, Maine and Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, rather than that exemption title. And all it is was an appropriations and allocation section, and you can see the fiscal note there. Oh, and actually there is the final version of the language. So you'll see what the bill or what the committee amendment actually looks like. So if there's any concerns with anything in either document, let me know and I'll make sure that can get updated.
Okay. Any questions on that one? All right. 1804. Oh, this is the minority.
Oh, yes.
report.
And also 1477 was the majority report. And that is reflected in the summary. So this is the minority report on 1804, which was the act concerning funding and oversight over transportation matters. I'll go over a couple of things. Next to each section, I tried to identify what each section was doing. So for example, in section 1, next to section 521, this is about the codification of the highway fund oversight. And because, and you can tell me to remove this, members on the minority report, but to add more of that conformity was the section 522, which was just continuing that exclusion. So it's more conformed across all of the other provisions that gave broad oversight to AFA. It's just adding that exception into those other statutes. So as long as that's okay, that can stay in. Otherwise, I will remove that. So yes, so the first 3 sections are about the codification of the highway fund oversight. Section 4, which is on the second page, is about that's the procurement piece from DOT. So that's removing that project specific designation. So that hasn't changed. Section 5 is related to highway fund revenue. So just adding that the auto sales and use tax, which is used as a part of highway fund revenue, is just adding it to that part of statute. And then section 6 is that list of here's how the highway fund can be used. So it's specifying which parts of the state police are funded by the highway fund. So currently there's that split funding. The amendment has continued 100% funding for the traffic safety, commercial vehicle enforcement, and motor vehicle inspection programs, as well as the Bureau of Highway Safety. So that's what those two new subsections do. And it also says that subsection 2 is repealed. So that stays the same. I will note on subsection 8, I'm gonna keep it, but I just wanted to flag. I think pursuant to and subject to the limitations may be slightly similar. I'm gonna let the people who are a little bit better at the nuances of bill drafting, but I just wanted to flag in case I believe they could be read similarly, but in case that changes, I just wanted to let you know that I'm making sure that it maintains the meaning of it's limited to the Constitution. So section 7 is all new language, and that's talking about the baseline capital expenditures piece, where beginning on July 1st, 2027, adding those minimum amounts for the baseline expenditure for each of those programs. So the Highway and Bridge Capital Program, the Highway Light Capital Program, and the Multimodal Transportation Fund Program. And then that those baselines, just like any other baseline, is adjusted based on CPI every 2 years. The 8th section is the required biennial procurement report. This is dealing with section 8 is with the Maine Turnpike Authority. And please let me know. It said 2026. If you wanted to add an emergency, we can add emergency. I just changed it to 2028, but you could do it to 2030, whatever works. And that's the same with section 10, which is required biennial procurement reports from DOT. That I also changed to 2028. Section 9 is pretty much the same as in the bill as printed. There was just the addition of the word public. This just mirrored another definition of multimodal transportation infrastructure, just to make sure they were consistent, but I can remove that if you wish. Section 11 is specifically talking about where state police funding comes from. It's getting rid of that 65-35 split. It's for the administrative and support programs, saying those are funded 100% by the general fund, whereas those other programs, so motor vehicle inspection, traffic safety program, commercial vehicle enforcement program, which is 100% funded by the highway fund, maintains its 100% funding by the highway fund. Any questions on that section? Okay. I made some drafting changes on, section 12 is, I don't believe, changed, and that's just about the liquor bond revenue going to the general fund. Section 13 is with the auto sales and use tax. You'll see that the percentage is now 100%. And I also made some drafting changes that was recommended for clarity. There was a gap when the funding would take place. So just closing that so it matches the rest of it. So 2027 now instead of, actually it should be, let me fix that. It should be July 1st, 2027. Then that should match the rest of when the program is implemented. And I believe, that is it. Are there any, for members on the minority report, anything that should be added or changed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Melanie, thank you so much, right? This is a lot of work and you put in nights and weekends and everything else. And I just want to say thank you very, very much. You did yeoman's work and it's much appreciated.
Thank you. And after having the DOT presentation, if everybody that's on the majority report would like to come over to this report, which would actually, well, we can move that back to the 48% and actually start funding highways like we don't seem to want to do.
Just have one bridge collapse, then everybody will be on board.
So we're gonna be off next week, apparently. And do we need to talk about scheduling? Okay, so we'll go schedule.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn and